Have you ever hired a sales candidate who just gave a flawless interview? I mean, absolutely perfect, only to watch them completely struggle to close a single deal once they actually started.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Right. You're sitting there looking at this person who is, incredibly charismatic in the boardroom, who had all the right answers, and you're just wondering, where did the person I interviewed go?
Yeah, they just vanish.
Exactly. If you're a sales leader, a hiring manager, or an executive listening to this, you know exactly the pain I'm talking about. It's incredibly frustrating, and honestly, it is incredibly expensive.
It really is. And, it's a trap that catches even the most seasoned executives and veteran sales directors. You see the charm in the interview room, you hear the absolute confidence in their voice, and it creates this massive halo effect.
Like the halo effect, yeah. You start projecting.
Exactly. You start projecting future revenue onto a personality rather than a proven commercial capability. You start visualizing them like crushing their quota based entirely on how well they command a 30-minute conversation.
Which is so dangerous.
Right. And that is the exact moment the hiring process starts to break down.
Which is why we're dedicating today's deep dive entirely to the mechanics of achieving true sales success. Our mission today is to dissect the framework laid out by Wynn Nathan Davis from the Sales Experts.
It's a great piece of work.
It really is. We're looking at their incredibly comprehensive guide called What Makes a Great Sales Hire to help you identify the top-tier sales professionals who actually deliver revenue. Rather than just the ones who have perfected the art of the interview.
Right. We're going to extract the defining characteristics of that top 1% of talent. But beyond just listing traits, we need to expose the hidden mechanical failures of traditional hiring that are quietly bleeding your company's resources.
The invisible costs.
Exactly. Finally, we'll break down the actionable structural strategies used by top-tier recruiters to secure elite sales professionals. Because hiring the right salesperson, it doesn't just fill a territory vacancy.
It transforms the whole business.
It fundamentally transforms a business. It accelerates go-to-market strategies, opens entirely new verticals, and creates sustainable long-term growth.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how to secure that transformative hire, we first have to understand why smart hiring managers so often get it completely wrong.
Yeah, the illusion of the good interview.
Exactly. Why do traditional indicators like a great personality, interview confidence, industry familiarity, and even an impressive string of job titles on LinkedIn fail to predict real revenue generation?
It's a great question.
Because relying on interview charm is like, it's like hiring an executive chef just because they talk beautifully about flavor profiles and farm-to-table ingredients, but they have never actually worked a Friday night dinner rush in a commercial kitchen.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. The presentation is fantastic, but the line completely collapses when the tickets start printing and the heat turns up.
That analogy hits the nail on the head because it separates theory from execution. The eloquent talk about flavor profiles is the charisma, but surviving the dinner rush is the daily discipline required to actually navigate a complex sales cycle.
The real work.
Yeah, the gritty work. What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of why hiring managers fall for this. Confidence is incredibly common, especially in sales candidates, but confidence does not equal capability.
So true.
Two candidates can look identical on paper. They can have similar job titles, they can come from comparable companies in your exact industry, and they can both sit across from you and speak with absolute, unwavering authority.
On paper, they look like absolute clones.
Yet, their actual commercial results in the wild will differ dramatically. One of those candidates will systematically exceed their sales targets, build a robust pipeline, and accurately forecast their deals.
And the other?
The other will constantly struggle to generate a single qualified lead, blaming the market, the product, or the pricing. Being good at interviewing requires one specific set of skills presentation, concise communication, and short-term charm.
Right.
Being good at sales requires a totally different set of gritty behaviors. It requires relentless daily discipline to face rejection, to prospect when no one is looking, and to systematically guide highly skeptical prospects through a complex buying cycle.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
If we are talking to a room full of sales VPs right now, they are going to say, hold on, isn't confidence exactly what we want? If they cannot confidently sell themselves to me in an interview when the stakes are high, how are they going to confidently sell our enterprise software to a skeptical CFO?
Oh, confidence is absolutely a baseline prerequisite. You certainly do not want a salesperson who cannot command a room.
Okay, so it is necessary.
It is a necessary ingredient, but it is not the whole recipe. The danger is confusing that baseline presentation skill with genuine commercial capability.
I see.
A candidate might be a phenomenal communicator, but if they lack the underlying mechanical ability to map a stakeholder committee, or, if they don't know how to run a proper discovery call that uncovers actual business pain, that confidence is entirely empty.
It's just noise.
Right. They will sound incredibly polished on the phone with a prospect, but they will never actually advance the deal to a signed contract. The confidence gets them in the door, but the underlying commercial mechanics get them paid.
So if confidence and charm are just the shiny veneer, what are we actually looking for under the hood? What are the actual mechanics of a great sales hire?
Well, that brings us to the core philosophy of the sales experts. They identify 3 non-negotiable foundations of a strong hire.
3 pillars. Let's hear them.
Across almost all competitive industries, the strongest, most resilient sales hires share these defining pillars. These are the indicators that separate the pretenders from the revenue generators. The first pillar is a proven track record.
Okay, a proven track record.
Yeah. The most reliable predictor of future performance is past performance. Elite salespeople consistently produce quantifiable results, regardless of the macroeconomic climate.
But here's the problem with past performance. Every candidate walks into an interview claiming they crushed their quota.
Oh, of course they do.
They all say they were President's Club. If we only hire based on past performance, aren't we just going to overpay for a rep who got incredibly lucky at a competitor that happened to have a vastly superior product?
Yes.
How do we separate their actual individual skill from the massive brand momentum they used to ride on?
That is the exact risk you run if you start at the high-level numbers. If you look at a W-2 or a resume bullet point and blindly assume competence, you are highly vulnerable to the lucky rep syndrome.
The lucky rep, yeah.
This is where you have to move from a conversational interview to a forensic evaluation. You do not just ask if they hit their number, you interrogate the mechanics of how they hit it. You demand verifiable data, and you drill down into deal ownership.
Deal ownership. Walk us through what that actually looks like in practice.
Deal ownership means determining whether the candidate actually drove the revenue or if they were merely standing in the room when a massive inbound deal closed itself.
Just taking the order.
Exactly. If a candidate says they closed a $2 million deal, you ask them, how did you source that opportunity? Who was the fiercest detractor on the buying committee? And what exact strategy did you use to neutralize them?
Oh, getting really specific.
Very specific. When procurement pushed back on pricing, what trade-offs did you negotiate to maintain your margin? A lucky rep who rode on the coattails of a great product marketing team will give you vague, high-level answers.
They'll just say, oh, I built a great relationship.
Exactly. A true top-tier sales professional will be able to granularly reconstruct the entire timeline of the deal because they sweat over every single detail. That level of forensic questioning is how you verify a track record.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because even a verifiable track record isn't enough on its own. That brings us to the second pillar relevant sales experience.
Right.
Selling is not a universal plug-and-play skill. Experience matters most when it surgically aligns with the commercial structure of your specific role.
That's a crucial point.
I mean, selling a fast-paced $500 transactional software product requires entirely different muscles than selling a $5 million enterprise technology solution. How are sophisticated hiring managers still failing to recognize these massive nuances in commercial structure?
They often fail because they get blinded by industry proximity. A hiring manager will look at a resume and say, oh, they sold software to healthcare companies and we sell software to healthcare companies. Perfect match.
Right, they see the keywords and stop thinking.
Exactly. But they ignore the mechanics of the sale itself. If that candidate was selling a low-cost, high-volume product that closes in 2 weeks over a single Zoom call, and your product is a multi-million-dollar enterprise solution that requires an 18-month sales cycle.
That's a huge difference.
Massive. It requires a pilot program, security audits, board-level approval. That candidate is going to drown in your environment.
It goes back to the marathon versus the sprint. They might know the industry jargon, but they do not have the endurance or the strategic patience for an 18-month deal cycle.
The buyer's sophistication is entirely different. The level of competition is different. The sheer number of stakeholders you have to navigate is different.
So true.
When you find a candidate whose experience truly matches the mechanics of your role, meaning they deeply understand your specific deal sizes, your typical cycle lengths, and your exact pricing structures, that candidate can ramp up exponentially faster.
Because they've run that exact play before.
Right. They do not have to learn a new rhythm of business. They already understand the specific objections and procurement hurdles associated with your tier of customer.
And that leads us to the third pillar, which sounds incredibly obvious at first glance, the ability to generate revenue.
Mm.
But it's not just about closing deals that are handed to you, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about the raw, gritty capability of generating new business from thin air.
This is often the most critical failing point for new hires. Many roles require a salesperson who can build a pipeline entirely from scratch.
Which is hard.
It's very hard. This demands highly proactive prospecting. They cannot just sit back, manage a few legacy accounts, and wait for the marketing department to hand them a warm, highly qualified inbound lead. They need to actively hunt.
Right.
They must be capable of identifying cold targets, breaking through the noise, securing those initial exploratory meetings, and qualifying the opportunities.
So how do we actually test for that hunting ability in an interview? Because everyone is going to claim they are a relentless prospector.
You test it by asking them to build their engine right in front of you.
Oh, I like that.
You ask them, if you start on Monday and your territory has 0 active pipeline, what exactly does your Tuesday look like? Walk me through your specific cadence. How many touch points? What channels are you leveraging?
If I'm on the spot.
Yeah. How do you bypass the gatekeeper at a Fortune 500 company? You look for a systematic methodology, not just enthusiasm. Candidates who can articulate a highly disciplined, independent pipeline generation strategy are the ones who will protect your business from revenue dry spells.
So if you are opening a job requisition tomorrow, before you even type up the description, you have to look at these 3 pillars. You need forensic proof of quota attainment, an exact match in commercial sales mechanics, and a verified strategy for independent pipeline generation.
Absolutely.
So we know what a successful candidate looks like when we stress test their background. But how do they execute this in the real world? This brings us to the massive difference between past behavior and current environment match.
This is where we separate the top 1% from the merely good. Strong sales hires demonstrate specific, repeatable behaviors, proactive prospecting, highly disciplined CRM management, acute commercial awareness, and an immense, almost unnatural resilience when facing rejection.
It takes a lot of resilience.
It really does, but those behaviors do not exist in a vacuum. If we connect this to the bigger picture, those behaviors must perfectly align with the specific commercial environment they are walking into at your company.
So what does this all mean? The environment match. This is the hunter versus farmer dynamic, right?
It is the most classic example, yes. Many organizations hire salespeople expecting them to aggressively hunt for new revenue, but they accidentally hire someone whose entire career has been focused on account management.
The farmers.
Right. Some professionals are absolute artists at managing existing enterprise accounts, defending against competitors, and incrementally expanding those relationships. They are farmers, but others are pure prospectors. They love the thrill of the cold approach and breaking into new logos. They are hunters.
Is it fair to say that putting a top-performing elite salesperson in the wrong environment will actually turn them into a failing salesperson?
Without question. Consider a salesperson who performs incredibly well at a Fortune 500 tech giant. They are a top earner, but they are used to operating with massive infrastructure. They have a marketing machine delivering warm leads, they have a dedicated team of sales engineers to handle product demos, and they have an army of business development reps setting their appointments.
They're highly supported.
Exactly. Now imagine a scrappy Series B startup hires that person, assuming they are a superstar. But in the startup, there are no inbound leads. There are no sales engineers. It is pure, raw, independent outbound prospecting.
It's a rude awakening.
That former superstar is highly likely to fail, not because they lost their sales ability overnight, but because their highly developed behaviors do not match this new, unsupported environment.
So if your role requires aggressive, from-scratch pipeline creation, and you hire a senior account executive who is used to just taking existing legacy clients out to expensive steakhouses to renew multi-year contracts,
You are heading for a catastrophic failure.
the results will be devastating and both parties will end up deeply frustrated.
Which is why this raises an important question for every executive listening right now. Have you honestly and accurately defined the specific commercial structure of your open role?
You have to know what you're hiring for.
Right. Do you know the realistic size of the territory? Do you know the exact level of internal support this new hire will actually receive? Are you expecting them to do their own lead generation, or is marketing supplying the pipeline? You simply cannot match a candidate to an environment if you haven't ruthlessly defined that environment first.
You must define your commercial environment first.
Hmm.
The level of support, the market competitiveness, and your primary goal new business acquisition versus account growth.
Exactly.
But knowing these precise requirements is one thing. Actually finding, attracting, and vetting this top-tier caliber of talent is an entirely different beast. And that brings us to the financial risks of getting this wrong and why standard job postings are failing you.
The financial risks of a bad sales hire are staggering, and they are usually severely underestimated by the C-suite.
The reality of the math is actually quite terrifying. A bad hire does not just cost you their base salary and their benefits package for 6 months.
No, it's so much more.
It goes so much deeper into the operational tissue of the company. You are looking at wasted recruitment fees and onboarding costs. You are looking at hundreds of hours of management time burned trying to coach someone who is fundamentally a bad fit.
And the culture drain.
Yes, the disruption to the team's culture. But the biggest cost is the invisible one. The lost revenue opportunities, the deals they burned in your territory because they did not know how to navigate the procurement process. A poor sales hire can literally cost a business hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in lost market opportunity.
It's staggering.
So with stakes that high, why do companies still try to run this process entirely on their own, relying on basic job boards, just to save a little bit of money on recruiter fees up front?
It is the ultimate false economy. Many companies attempt to hire independently because they feel they have a strong internal HR team. And while they might occasionally stumble upon a decent candidate, they almost always miss out on the absolute strongest performers. There is a fundamental truth in sales recruitment that the sales experts highlight. The very best salespeople, the top 1% who consistently crush their quotas, are usually happily employed.
They are looking.
Exactly. They are making massive commission checks, they are highly valued by their current VPs, and they are absolutely not spending their evenings scrolling through job boards or actively applying to open requisitions.
They're completely passive candidates. They aren't looking for you, so your job posting is entirely invisible to them.
Precisely. If you are only interviewing active applicants, you are automatically limiting yourself to a talent pool that naturally excludes the most successful people in your industry.
That makes total sense.
This is where specialist sales recruiters provide an asymmetric advantage. They do not wait for applications. They use deep market research and direct, surgical headhunting techniques to identify and quietly approach these passive top performers directly.
So they go to them.
They bypass the active job market entirely to extract the talent your competitors are desperately trying to keep.
And once a specialist recruiter gets that passive superstar to the table, they do not just run them through that shiny sports car conversational interview we talked about at the beginning.
Right.
They use a completely different methodology to evaluate them.
At the sales experts, they utilize a highly structured, data-driven evaluation process because you simply cannot evaluate commercial performance from a well-formatted CV.
You just can't.
This structured assessment is designed to pierce through the charisma and identify genuine, repeatable commercial capability. They rigorously test past performance indicators using the forensic questioning we discussed earlier.
Really digging in.
They dig deep into the daily behavioral metrics of pipeline generation. They assess actual deal ownership capability, ruthlessly stripping away the candidates who were just in the room when the contract was signed. Most importantly, they evaluate the candidate's ultimate behavioral fit with the client's highly specific commercial environment.
They are essentially stripping the gut feeling out of the hiring equation entirely.
Completely. Structured interviews and deep behavioral performance analysis remove the reliance on executive intuition, which is notoriously flawed. You are making a multi-$100,000 investment decision based on verified evidence of past capability and precise environmental alignment.
Not just who had the best jokes.
Right. Rather than just offering the job to whoever told the best stories during the interview lunch.
So if you want to protect your revenue engine, you have to abandon the conversational interview. You need to implement structured evaluations focused heavily on past performance verification. You must aggressively stress test for deal ownership, and you should strongly consider leveraging specialist recruiters to headhunt that passive elite tier of sales talent that your standard HR processes will simply never reach.
It is the ultimate risk mitigation strategy. It protects your territory, your management time, and your bottom line.
Let's tie all of these insights together so you can start applying them to your very next hiring cycle. Our mission today was to map out the architecture of true sales success.
Yes.
And what we have learned by dissecting Win Nathan Davis' framework from the sales experts is that hiring must be entirely ruthlessly focused on one single outcome: predictable revenue generation.
Everything else, the industry contacts, the charming personality, the prestigious past employers, is entirely secondary to their mechanical ability to generate revenue.
Everything. This means you have to move past the illusion of the confident interview. You must demand forensic proof of a track record. You have to ensure their specific past experience directly aligns with your unique commercial environment. Remember the danger of putting a high-velocity transactional rep into a complex enterprise cycle.
A critical mistake.
And you have to utilize structured, stress-tested assessments that evaluate the relentless daily behaviors of hunting and closing.
Hiring is not just an administrative task to fill an empty seat. It is a critical investment in your company's future enterprise value. A great sales hire is an asset that yields massive compound interest over time.
So before you commit to your next executive search, before you let your team post that generic job description, stop and do the hard work. Clearly define your commercial environment and your exact success profile.
Crucial step.
Are you looking for a hunter to break open a new territory, or a farmer to protect and expand your existing enterprise accounts? What does your internal support structure actually look like in reality? If you want to dive deeper into how to mathematically structure this recruitment process, how elite professional candidate assessment actually works, and how to build a world-class team capable of consistent, weatherproof revenue growth, you need to visit thesalesexperts.com and explore their Q&A section.
It's fantastic.
It is packed with actionable intelligence on how recruiters extract passive candidates, what the investment looks like, and how to elevate your entire talent acquisition strategy.
It is a phenomenal resource for any leader who is serious about upgrading their commercial engine. And as you sit down to evaluate your current sales force and map out your hiring goals for the next quarter, I want to leave you with one final uncomfortable question to really mull over.
Let's hear it.
If your absolute best, top-performing salesperson, the one who carries the quota for the entire team, handed in their resignation tomorrow morning, does your current internal interview process actually have the scientific rigor to identify their replacement, or would you just end up hiring the most charming person in the room?